Welcome, everyone, to one of several virtual oral presentations prepared for the 2016 ANA Conference, Quality, Safety, and Staffing. This session is Writing Research Abstracts, a Smarter Approach. My name is Roz, and I will be your moderator for this session. This presentation will last 30 minutes. To earn contact hours for this session, you must be registered for the conference and pay any required fees, complete the entire activity, log into the online CE evaluation system, and complete the evaluation for this session, VO102. Please see the conference program for additional details. The contact hours will be awarded with the rest of your conference continuing nursing education credits. You may print out your certificate when you have completed the evaluation and entered all of your sessions. 0.50 contact hours are awarded for this continuing nursing education activity. The planner and presenter of this CNE activity have disclosed no relevant financial, professional, or personal relationships with any commercial companies pertaining to this activity. And now I'd like to introduce you to our expert speaker, Dr. Jennifer Greer. A former journalist, Jennifer Greer, Ph.D., is the lead instructor and educational services liaison at the University of Alabama at Birmingham. She has 9 years of experience teaching research writing in professional development courses and workshops at the University of Alabama at Birmingham, which is a research-intensive university. Dr. Greer teaches graduate students, postdoctoral fellows, research staff, and junior faculty. She has also presented and publishes nationally. We are delighted to have Dr. Jennifer Greer with us today to discuss Writing Research Projects, a Smarter Approach. And now, Jennifer, I will turn the program over to you.
Thanks, Roz. The subtitle of my talk is A Smarter Approach, so you may be thinking, what's wrong with the old approach? Well, I'm concerned that it's out of date. We now have evidence from linguists and researchers who analyze academic writing to show that well-written abstracts, the ones that get published and funded, share a common narrative pattern. But unfortunately, most research writers that I meet don't even know about this pattern. So what I want to do today is to talk about the common pattern that we've found in abstracts, and to look at examine an abstract that was written using this pattern to show why it's more powerful, and to talk with that writer and to see if maybe we can move to a smarter approach on abstracts. So how do I know that we need a smarter approach? Well, number one, we know that few texts are more strategic than the abstract. It is an essential screening device, and we know that it's an essential device for not only for publication, but for conferences and for grants. It's interesting. One of the sources that I use that's done a lot of research, Swells and Feek, they talk about studies that show that really prestigious journals like the Journal of the American Medical Association will not even send on an article that has been submitted for review if the abstract doesn't pass muster. So that is an important screening device, and so I'm concerned that we may not be aware of that. Okay, and the other point that I worry about with abstracts is that I think we, as writers, we're trained to think of them as just simple summaries that we dash off at the end of the process. And I know this because I've done it myself. And if you think about the end of the research writing process, you're exhausted, you've run out of time, and your enthusiasm for the project has waned. And so, and then you're also tasked with this idea of perhaps trying to distill, a 30-page paper into 300 words, and at that point, it's really not a distillation project. It's a very difficult task. And so, what I'm suggesting is, if we knew there was a narrative structure, a storytelling structure, and we viewed it as a different kind of process, and kind of a fresh new storytelling process, in a shorter time frame, that it would be an easier, better, and more effective a process. And the third reason I know that we need a smarter approach is that weekly here at the university, I walk through our School of Nursing. I have good colleagues that work there, and I do some instruction over there. And what excites me about my trips through our School of Nursing is that the hallways are lined with posters. Okay, so I know that there's some great research being done at our university by nursing students. But when I stop to read the posters, and this is anecdotal, but I would say only 1 in 4 of them have a well-written abstract that is going to position this research for publication funding or a conference proposal. And I think it's even perhaps sadder that, I'm disappointed about this, because we do have this pretty easy and effective pattern and approach for writing a good abstract. So, and the last piece of evidence that I want to throw out there to you is that what we've learned in the rhetoric and composition field about writing abstracts is that if they are written either midway or even earlier in the process, they can serve as a diagnostic tool. Okay, so the writer can begin to see the story unfold. They can even kind of test the strength of the story. Is the gap really there? Is the problem important enough? And as Belcher says, and Belcher has taught research writing at UCLA for 10 years, if you can't write a 300-word abstract about this project that you're either in the middle of or you're contemplating, it may lack focus. And so you can kind of test an idea. So this idea of pre-writing an abstract and using that kind of a 300-word abstract or a one-page as kind of a rapid prototype, it has proven to be a very effective idea for writers here at UAB. And when I say effective, this particular slide makes me smile. So, because I see so many students that are walking around UAB with what we would call lit review vertigo, okay? They get enmeshed in their nursing studies, and they start reading empirical and review articles from the very beginning, and they're walking around with all this evidence kind of swishing around in their head, and if they had a way of trying to piece it together to find the story in what they're reading, I think we could have a cure for vertigo, and they can begin to see how a real research article would shape up or take place. So what about the citable abstract and the pattern? I've talked about linguists have looked for the pattern, and a storytelling pattern is important because of what we remember. Some of the abstracts that I see on the posters in the School of Nursing are really kind of lists. They're just kind of lists of information, and that's not a memorable. That's like a shopping list of sorts. That's not a memorable narrative. But what we do remember are stories, and there's a genius and there's a story in every compelling piece of research, especially for nursing students, because they're working on such pressing and practical problems. So the pattern that the linguists have identified for abstracts is called OGISH, and that's an acronym. It's really what we call a mnemonic device because it helps you remember the 5 moves. And the first move is to outline a practical problem in the field, and that's a practical problem. It's a problem that affects people. It costs lives, or it costs health, or it costs time, or costs money. So then the second move that the writer makes is to justify the study or the project by demonstrating that there's a gap in the science. And so you have convinced your editor or your reader that there's a problem out there, and then that warrants attention, and then you come in and you with another move and you demonstrate that there's a gap in the science. Okay, so we don't really know how to solve this part of the problem. Then you introduce the study's question and purpose. And that's what we call the I move. And that's an important move to have at this point because we've set up a problem and created a rationale. And so now the reader wants to know, okay, where are you going with this particular bit of research? The fourth move is the S move. It summarizes the method briefly, but most abstracts are not methods-driven unless it's a methodological study. So the S move is usually brief. And then the H move is where you highlight the key findings and the significance. And notice that the H move, in this I say findings as opposed to results. Most results are uninterpreted, and so findings tend to be interpreted or results with meaning, would be what I would say there. Okay, I wanted to introduce you to Dr. Vanessa Galloso. She's an instructor in the Clinical Simulation Laboratory here at UAB, and she was a student in one of my writing courses 3 or 4 years ago. Vanessa, you were, can you tell me a little bit about the context for what you were doing at that point in the writing course?
Yes, I knew a lot about my topic and what I want to write about. So then I was thinking, and then I started to do the academic writing to make sure that I was having to have some structure to my writing. And I did start with the abstract. That was a very good start for my research and kind of pulling everything together, what I had in my head. Okay,
because you were working on your dissertation at that point.
Uh-huh.
So what we did with Vanessa is she was, and the other students in the class, she used the OGISH pattern template, which you can access in your app, and you can also access Vanessa's model abstract in your app for this session. And so she used the OGISH pattern, and what the students do is they just take about 10 minutes and they do what we call a quick write or a free write, and they just draft very quickly to the 5 OGISH moves, and they use some of the academic language that we give them, and she drafted a great draft abstract and then went on to polish it. And if you look at her model abstract, I think you'll see that the first 3 sentences really outline the problem. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
And I guess in a lit review, you're interested in setting up a problem pretty strongly.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah. And she is focusing on, in particular, can you read the title of your abstract?
Yes, relationships between parenting variables and adolescent sexual activity among Latinos, one integrative literature review. Okay, so she's looking at this topic of parenting variables and adolescent activity among Latinos. And so I think when you see it, you're going to see the 5 moves clearly. The J move, which is justifying the gap. She has a growing body of literature, focuses on variables. However, or yet, there have been few systematic reviews of this literature. And that's typical language that we use for that gap in the J move. Then you see this signposting language, again, the purpose of the study in her I move. And you'll also notice that she collapses her I move and her S move, which is a summary of the study, into one sentence together, because I guess the methodology in a literature review is not a very long section. Yes, no, it's pretty simple.
Yeah, it's a paragraph or 2. Okay, so there's not a lot there on methodology. And also, when she collapsed those 2 moves, that leaves her more space in the abstract for the H move, which is the highlight of the findings. And notice I use the word findings instead of results, because results tend to be uninterpreted data and findings are interpreted data. And when you're writing an abstract, you want to kick it up to meaningful data or findings. And she's got 4 of them here. Now, were you pleased with the abstract that you wrote?
Yes, I was. As a draft, I think was pretty good. It was a good start for me to actually explore more each session on my dissertation. And
so, and you wrote midway through your dissertation, because this is your lit review, And that's one of the things that we learned from Belcher, that so this did serve as a diagnostic for you.
Mm-hmm.
You said earlier that you were able to go back and revisit it and use references. Can you talk to me about how you did that?
Yeah, so after I did this, I used this outline, then I was going back while I was writing my papers and the literature review, I was putting the reference, okay, what was the papers and the authors that I'm going to support this session, the background, what was papers that I'm going to support my findings. And then at the end, I was going back to the abstract again and then review my abstract and make change and make that better.
Yeah, to polish there in the end. So when you do an OGIS abstract and you use this strategy of pre-writing, you're not presupposing your results. That's a really important thing to understand, because as a scientist we would never do that. But you are trying to find the research story or the narrative. And so you know that you will be coming back once you get your real findings. Sometimes I encourage people to indicate anticipated findings if they're pre-writing an abstract for an empirical study, so that they're comfortable kind of trying to see the whole story. But if they can see the whole story, it really does help guide them through the process, don't you think?
Yes. And then I was able to go back and say, okay, so how many studies I actually was able to review and find, what was the results, because here was just the beginning, so I had one idea what kind of findings I'm going to find, things like that.
And then you had surprises, too.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. What about using the template? Do you think it was faster, the OGIS template?
Yes, it was very quick for me to go through straight what I need to do and to be more directive, and was easy for me to have a structure to go through instead of trying to write and nothing was not going to anywhere.
Yeah, it's interesting. Vanessa, you're from Brazil, aren't you?
Yes.
Okay. And when Vanessa came into class and she said that she liked the OGIS template because she learned English as a second language, I laughed because there are so many native English speakers or American students that come up to me that also love the template. And I think the reason is that as researchers, we don't know that there are storytelling structures out there, number one, because that's, not our expertise. And if we had storytelling abilities, we may have forgotten them, or we didn't know that they applied to the research context. And number two, academic English is not anybody's first language. When the academies that we use in formal research writing and is important language, but it's not anything that we learn as a first language. And I wanna look at that when you call up the OGIS template on your app, and I hope you will see that there's some formal academies or some sentence starters on the left of the template. And I hope you save the template to your desktop and use it in the way that we do in the workshops, because if you do, and you dedicate about 10 minutes to 15 minutes to fast drafting, I think you'll be amazed at how coherent and clear the story is when it begins to shape up. And that academic signposting language on the left, you can feel free to use that to help you move through the abstract. That is not plagiarism, because none of that is original language. That's almost the academic courtesy language that we use as all academics to move through and structure an abstract. So it is very useful for you. So, anyways, thanks, Vanessa, for sharing your experience. I have a few final tips for the OGIS abstracts. As I said, save it to your computer. Use it until you can memorize it, and try the pre-writing strategy. You can use the pre-writing strategy on an active project like Vanessa did. As I mentioned earlier, you can also use it to road test a project. Say you're interested and a particular idea, you've been talking with another nursing colleague or instructor about it, and you know, write up the address, the abstract, and email it to her, and you kind of get a sense of, okay, would this really work? Is this something we really want to invest time in? Find a peer partner that also knows the OGIS, share the OGIS model, because once you get these 5 moves down, you'll be amazed at how skilled you can get at using this narrative structure, and how fast and capable you can get at writing abstracts. And the structure can also really actually be expanded to write longer pieces of research text. It is very similar to another research structure that you may have seen called Introduction, Methods, Results, Discussion, or the MROD structure. But we find that the OGIS structure works better, actually, for abstracts because it has better questions and prompts in it. So, and then as always, when you're writing an abstract, you want to draft it and polish it up as best you can. Get friendly peer or classroom feedback, and then polish it up to the point where you want to get what we call content level feedback, and then you would go to a professor or a senior colleague to see what they say about what you've done. But if you use the OGIS model, you will find that you have a better first draft and you'll get better feedback. I'm gonna shoot back to the model real quick because I just want to point out one thing, one failing in many abstracts that I see on the posters in the nursing building is that they start here with the I move. They introduce the study's question and purpose, and it's kind of a perfunctory introduction that doesn't have a problem or a rationale. So it's really not a compelling start. Sometimes I see the problem and the rationale come after the I move, but from a storytelling standpoint or the standpoint of engaging your audience, engaging an editor, engaging a grant study committee or a conference review committee, you're always rhetorically stronger if you lead with that problem and you lead with that gap. Sometimes I see also abstracts that start with the J move or they start with the gap, and again, your readers are not really interested in a gap if they don't link it to a problem, a practical problem. And I think increasingly as scientists and academics, we're being called to link the work that we do to practical problem solving. It's kind of this whole idea of bench to bedside translational medicine and translational conversation that we have about our research, because we're finding that the lay public and even leaders that we work with don't understand what we do, and that we're having to kind of kick up our communication game on how we talk about our research and write about it. So I think I'm ready to wrap up here. At the end, we've got some references for you. And the reason I include the references is because the type of writing instruction that we do at UAB is evidence-based writing instruction. It's not idiosyncratic writing instruction. It's not write like me, but it's based on the latest evidence that we see coming out of rhetoric and composition and applied linguistics of academic English and research writing. And we have, linguists and rhetoricians study the field of academic writing across all genres and or all disciplines, and they're able to identify patterns like OGIS that work pretty much for any kind of discipline and any kind of abstract. You can use OGIS for conference abstract, lit review abstract, empirical article abstract, article, grant, just about any short summary, strategic summary that you need on a project. Thank you. Thanks, Vanessa.
Thank you.
A big thanks to Dr. Greer for discussing this important component of nursing. Also, thanks to Dr. Vanessa Gayoso for the assist with the explanation. And thanks to you for listening to this session and attending the conference. You may obtain contact hours for this session by checking VO102 on your conference evaluation. Please retain your badge on your registration receipt, as they have information you will need to log into the evaluation system. We hope this information was helpful, and please check out the other virtual oral offerings on the conference app.